Did you know that 85% of your engine wear occurs at startup? Yes, that is correct, and this is where Lower the Friction comes in by putting a protective, lubricating barrier on all moving parts. This now gives you full-time protection to make your engine last longer, run smoother, give you better performance, and improved fuel economy. People across the country are reporting some very exciting results. Go to lowerthefriction.com, place your order, and enter in promo code SOS to get 5% off of your order. That's lowerthefriction.com. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the weekly Secrets of Saturn livestream. I am Jason Lindgren, your host. This week, I am joined by Crow777 and the Great Baldini. We were supposed to do something different, but at the last moment, Wayne McCroy had something come up, so he will not be joining us tonight, hence why I changed the title at the last second. Just going to be the three of us, and we're going to have a little bit of a chat about recent events and things that we've been going through lately. Gentlemen, welcome aboard.
Ahoy.
Howdy.
So, Crow, we were just having a discussion on the whole astrological notion of things, sidereal versus tropical, and some thoughts you had on that. So I'm going to hand you the conch and let you start this.
Does that make me piggy? Did you break my glasses?
Well, at least you got the reference.
You get the talking stick.
Yeah, I think it was a conch.
Yep.
I've got an actual family story about a conch, but not here, not how. Yeah, well, I was tonight at midnight. I'm releasing episode 287 with Athen Clemente, who's a sidereal astrologer, and so we had him on some months ago, and he made a prediction for December 14th that's when they would release the vaccine. And Jason had forgot that he said it. I forgot that he said it.
We all did.
And then, yeah, we all
funny.
did. Then all these subscribers started emailing. So, of course, I have to email Rose and say, Rose, did this happen? So Rose gets into the transcripts and says, yes, it did. So he nails, using sidereal astrology, he nails that the vaccine would likely begin delivery on December 14th, which it did. In the state of Rhode Island, it was exactly on that day. I don't know if everywhere, but you know, the national news was spouting off on that day, regardless of whether it was a day or two off. And it got us thinking. So first thing we did is we had Athen back to address these ideas. But when I called Athen, who's in Portugal, stuck in Portugal because of Covidius Minimus, he tells me he's starting to think that the big boys play by the sidereal sky clock. For people who don't know what that means, I'll just flesh it out a little bit. When you say sidereal in reference to astrology, basically what you're saying is every calculation I make is based on the sky that is literally over my head. If I go outside right now and I can see Gemini, then I'm going to say that right now is under the influence of Gemini, these kinds of ideas. Inversely, and basically to make it perfectly clear, we owe just about every definition we have to tropical astrology, like what does Aries mean or what does anything mean. That came, most of it, as far as I know, I could be wrong, but as far as I know, that came to us through tropical astrology. What tropical astrology does is it rolls one sign backwards because of the supposed precession of the equinox, which is supposedly our Earth is spinning like a top, which I don't accept, but precession is provable. Every 72 years, we slip a degree. That's not arguable. It can be demonstrated. My point here is I think Athen may be right. I'm starting to look more carefully at it. I think that maybe the big events are planned to the sidereal or the actual sky above our head. But I'm not saying that tropical is wrong. I'm actually taking a hermetic stance. I'm saying they're both valuable. It's like having two tools in your toolbox that you will never use at the same time, but in a certain given circumstance, you would absolutely use one in one condition and the other in another condition. But there's all that, Jason.
So let's break that down some more. Now, tropical is the one that is the common one. Like if you go into a store and they have little scrolls of astrological things, stuff like that. That's why I never put a lot of stake into anything astrological. I was like, well, this could be about anybody. And I didn't know the difference. I didn't know that there were more than one kind. I know it now, obviously, and I've asked Ethan quite a few questions. And it makes so much more sense to me that if you're going to use something in the heavens to judge things on, shouldn't it be on what you actually see, when and where, and how it all interacts and all that properly, right?
It's problematic, and I'm not expert enough to try to make a stake either way. I know what I accept, but I know people that have spent their whole lives looking at one method or the other. As a matter of fact, I know a lot more people who've done tropical who will make an argument, good arguments in a lot of directions. But the truth of it is if I was to ask you, so from my point of view, there's probably two very important moments if you accept that the stars are influencing what goes on down here, which is provable if you ever understand what nature is doing. Like, why do hermit crabs do what they do, or why does the entire barrier reef spawn on the same day it's because of the sky clock. It's provable. Point is when you get the divine spark at the zygote, that would be an important moment to use the ideas that the influence of the stars matter at that moment. The next time will be attached to your so-called birth, but it's more specific than that. I would estimate that it's when you take your first breath. Your breath in alchemy is your spirit, so you're ingesting your spirit at that moment and the influences that will begin to shape the possibilities going forward. So if I was to ask you, how would you try to calculate out what matters? Would you go outside and look up and say, this is exactly what I see now over my head? Or would you calculate back to some other supposed time when the systems were put together, which don't line up with the sky anymore? And I know a lot of people will have a lot of views. For me, sidereal is the way that I will go, but you can't discount tropical. Almost everything we learned or know, as far as I know, came through tropical to us. So that's the closest I can come.
And do we know why it's called tropical?
The Tropic of Capricorn, Tropic of Cancer.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Well, so help me out a little bit, Crow. So 25 years ago, when I was introduced to some of these ideas of sidereal versus tropical astrology, and that was about when I was introduced to the different ideas. The person who introduced me to those ideas also introduced me, and what she used was what she specifically called sun signs on a day-to-day basis versus more of the house basis. Can you clarify for me the difference between make sure that I'm on the right page there in terms of the difference between sun signs as a day-to-day type of astrology versus the sidereal versus tropical?
I actually can't.
Okay.
Because there's actually more than just sidereal and tropical. There's Vedic ideas. There's all these other ideas. But in the episode we put up tonight, Athens starts to say things like it doesn't matter what method you're using because this is the house that matters right now.
Right.
So this plays into it. And from my part, I differ in some ways based on all the old reading that I've done. To me, if I was going to describe the whole system, I would describe it like this. All the luminaries, all the stars, the sun and the moon are here. They are in our vicinity of existence. I would further say that every luminary, like anything that has a frequency or anything else, will be a representation of influences, which is to say, I could go out today and it could be snowing. I could go out today and it could be raining. I could go out today and it would be warm. There's no guarantee any one of those things is going to happen, but eventually all of those things are going to happen.
Well, what do you think, Crow, about the idea that's been floated about in many ancient cultures, as well as some more modern ones, that the luminaries not only are influential but may in fact be sentient? What do you think about those ideas?
Well, if I want to go to places that I never talk about on the air, I would agree wholeheartedly. From my point of view, you cannot put a boot on the sun or the moon or a star or a so-called planet. Can't be done. You are tuned to here. You are living in the equivalent of an alchemist's alembic, a sealed, hermetic, encapsulated thing. Everything we will ever have is here. Nothing's coming, nothing's going, per se. In other words, the amount of water that's ever going to be here is here now. Now, it might turn in alchemically, it might be ice or air or whatever water can be in this system. But when you start to get into the ideas of where do we go when we die, then you have to face down the question that you just asked me. Almost everywhere before maybe the early 1900s, maybe the late 1800s, had the idea of things like the astral plane. Every old tradition of spirituality has the 3 or 5 bodies idea. You have a Buddhic body. You have Dharmakaya, that would be the Buddhist representation. The Nirmanakaya. These are all different bodies. As a matter of fact, we talked with Mandara Cromwell today on cymatics, and she brought up this very thing from, if I had to take a majority opinion from the oldest texts I've read, when you die, their idea is you're going to the astral plane, probably. It's not guaranteed. That's the next closest. And from their point of view, the astral plane is not this heaven-like place, though it can be. There's also a dark side of the railroad tracks. It's gone so far that there are people who were occultly initiated and adept that tried to say anyone who's a repetitive drug abuser or alcoholic are being influenced by the dark side of the astral plane. And it's some pretty serious studies that these folks are laying down. I mean, enough that you can't just shrug it off. So these ideas are here, and they used to be commonplace. So I think what it comes down to is people got to go on their own where they think is correct. And
yeah,
so,
I find it pretty fascinating that the idea that was, for insofar as we can tell, millennia was commonplace, that they were sentient,
right.
beings, is almost unheard of to the modern mind, and I find that fairly remarkable.
Well,
that they're not even aware that was once held to be true.
Well, that's because of our religions. Actually, if you're Christian, you have a representation. If you're Catholic, you really have a representation. We think the angels idea is, have you ever seen the angels of the age, like the Archangel Michael, Samael? There's a list of them.
In a Catholic sense. I mean, yeah, they have their way of putting it out. Sure.
so it has been suggested that this is categorically encoding these very same ideas in the Catholic manner. And since we all know that everything that is called Christian got its start in the Vatican or prior to the Vatican, but ended up being funneled through the Vatican, mostly, that's not 100% true, but mostly, the prayers and the Gospels and the things that we hold, most of them came through the Vatican. And they've changed
Well,
here and there.
what's held by the Vatican to be true. I mean, it's there's a wide, very, as with most things, there's a very wide, that's why there's over 1,000 different denominations, right? It's like a very wide range.
We also know that the Vatican knows more about this stuff than they ever discuss with their zillions of parishioners.
There it is. Coming into the Renaissance, the Vatican was whole hog into the Old Testament Kabbalah, Plato as their kind of savior, so to speak. And I'm not kidding. And the other part of that was Hermeticism. And those three things together were basically reflecting the older arcane ideas that they currently called pagan, that you could be busted hard or maybe even put to death for being what they called a pagan at that point. That's what they were actually doing behind the scenes, and you can demonstrate it at this point. And as they were doing this, it made it into Scripture, by the way, almost all of it. How many people have ever read Job seriously? As a matter of fact, the episode image that I'm putting up for tonight has passages from Job. The crow is thinking a Job passage, and the little thing I write over the guest box, those are both from Job. So if you don't understand that the sky clock is completely wholly encoded in these things, you're kind of missing the boat.
Well, I think that you're going to find the sky clock encoded in a lot of different in a lot of different things, right? It's not just there, but in a variety of different places. So I think that it's more than just that, but it certainly is in there. Right, for sure. In other words, I don't think there's a secret decoder ring that this is this and this is this, right? That just like flips it over. But certainly you're going to find most of these ideas encoded in a lot of places. Certainly it's interesting that with the Catholic Church, no doubt, that they're playing both sides of that coin in that Catholicism, as an overlay onto the idea of Christianity, is that they're going after pagans is hilarious, because Catholicism is paganism overlaid over Christianity. I mean, it's a one-for-one overlay. You get saints
instead of gods of nature.
Yes, exactly. So I find it ironic to the extreme that they say this is bad, but this is good, but this is really the same thing with a different name on it.
Well, how many times have I said, and I will continue to say, that the Roman Empire never fell? It just morphed over into being the Catholic Church, and it's still super powerful.
I think all the stories that they told us are probably poppycock,
or at least twisted.
The Roman Empire is nonsense, in my opinion.
Yeah, well,
if you read Marcus Aurelius, and he's supposedly a Caesar, it sounds like you're listening to a Buddhist monk. It is polar opposite of what you would expect a Caesar to be doing, but then again, it's claimed for those three rulers was the best time to be a human being on the planet, whether or not that's true. But in terms of a good decoder ring, there kind of are, not for everything, but for the things that were occult that mattered, the sky clock being chief among these ideas. The Christian mystics, they never lost the thread. Maybe that's not 100% honest. They didn't lose the entire thread. They held on to important parts of it that would allow us to get back. And believe it or not, the oldest tarot decks are completely concerned with Scripture and the older ways. And to quote, what I pulled from the book of Job is one line is, knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? That's a question. Do you know the ordinances of heaven? I pulled it from the King James. And the other one, which is just so bold on the face of it, I don't know how we came through church for so many generations not understanding the sky clock mattered. Canst thou bind the sweet influences of the Pleiades or loose the bands of Orion? So in other words, can you bind up the positive influences of the Pleiades, or can you undo or remove the stars in Orion's belt? Is what's being said.
And it's interesting, Crow, that that was one that I probably was in my early to mid 20s, maybe, I don't know, the early 20s probably, before I was aware of that the original, according to, as best I can tell, again, it's very difficult to find some of these things out because they've been so occluded over time, but that Abraham, right, was originally attributed as being one of the best early astrologers, and they used the term astrologer, and that didn't go over well within the Christian tradition, they have always seen divination and astrology to be, a bad thing and of the devil, hallelujah, right? But it very clearly says that the Magi who came to present gifts to Jesus were in fact astrologers. They were following the stars. And if you go back, again, far enough, and prior to even Moses having written the first 5 books of the Bible, which is the Pentateuch, that the original story was lined up with this sky clock, and that each of those figures were used to tell the story. So
each of the characters are also playing a role. And by the way, in the same lines from Job I just pulled, he talks about Mazzaroth. Do you know what that is? It's the Zodiac.
Oh, I got the verses right here. I just pulled them up so we could talk about it. Job
So-
38:32.
So
he does two full chapters on Leviathan in Job. So
Well, that has, like, I've read something like 6 levels of meaning on that one passage, and who knows how deep it goes. But find the part on Mazzaroth, Jason. That Mazzaroth is a clever word for Zodiac.
Yeah, that is its actual definition. So let's start with the first one I found. Job 38:32. Can you lead forth the Mazzaroth in their season, or can you guide the bear with its children? Bear with a capital B.
So we need to express what he just said. So the first reference is to the Zodiac. You can a man rewrite the stars? Do you have any power to change the turning of the zodiacal wheel over your head? No. The second one is critically important because he's talking about Ursa Major.
Right,
that's what
the
we
bear.
call the Big Dipper, and that's in reference to Polaris, the northern star that never sets.
Right.
There are levels and levels of meaning in what you just read.
Okay, how about Amos 5:8? He who made the Pleiades and Orion, and turns deep darkness into the morning, and darkens the day into night, who calls for the waters of the sea, and pours them out on the surface of the earth. The Lord is his name.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically talking about influence, but what version are you using?
Oh, let's see. I just pulled up the first one that had them all.
See, I was going to go back to Job 38 since you were already there, right? And we were speaking earlier of
There's quite a few here, so we got plenty to talk about in this stuff.
of whether they were the luminaries are sentient, and it's so right at the beginning in Job 38. Verse 4, where were you when I laid earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set? Or who laid its cornerstone while the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy? And so it gives them very clearly, personality there, right? It certainly shows that they were had life there. The morning stars sang together as the angels shouted for joy. This is at the first day of creation. So again, right there, all the way through Job 38, it does a very circuitous route.
I always go
of the stars.
Just so people know, I asked Jason is because the 1611, 911 encoded Bible, of whose Bible is it? King James Bible. That's who Bible it is.
Mm-hmm.
The King James Bible of 1611 is the basis for almost the entirety of the world we're living under in terms of law and so many other things. And it's also the reason why when you walk into a courtroom, there's a Bible. Do you swear to tell the truth? All that nonsense. What I often do is I bounce everything I read out of a KJV, King James, doesn't have to be 1611, but that's better, with the 1599 Geneva.
I like the Geneva better, yeah.
The 1599 Geneva is said to be one of the Bibles that came here when people wanted religious independence. It is claimed that one of the most prominent Bibles in the New World, where we are, was the Geneva. So it's good to do that because I can show you Bibles where the word heaven is actually translated to sky. There's a pretty big difference between those two ideas when you're talking about Christian tradition, right? When someone says heaven, you're thinking of this magical place where a dude with a white beard's giving you everything you want and life is good. When you say sky, you're not thinking that.
It's so helpful to use a variety of tools when you're looking at this stuff, like an interlinear, Strong's Concordance, that sort of stuff, because you can get a better look at what the what the original language was trying to say. And even then, cultural context is often lost, right? Because we're not an agrarian society. We don't connect well.
Yeah,
we don't connect well exactly with a lot of stuff in terms of the sheep, right? That sort of the sheep are not very smart. And so when he said "you're my flock," that wasn't a compliment.
Got your mask?
Can you imagine us rewriting it now? And Moses got old and lost his marbles. In 1,000 years, they're writing it and say, "Where are the sacred marbles?"
The sacred marbles. He could not find them, and behold, his marbles were lost.
Present the sacred purity.
And there was great angst.
And lo, behold.
Behold, they lost the rest of the cocaine. And
Oh, here we go.
and there was no rejoicing.
Oh.
But if you're interested in some of those versions, a great resource for that is just Bible.com. They also have a free app that you can use, but they have a variety of translations, including the Geneva translation. And I think there are over 80 different translations in English there, including the World Messianic Bible. There's a great version of Psalms if you're interested in it. It is just the Psalms, but it's done in like an iambic pentameter. So it's an interesting version of that. But there's a message version, which is a very modern, more of a paraphrase. But if you want to compare stuff specifically, for example, the 1611 that Crow is talking about versus the Geneva Bible versus the King James, and the King James with the apocrypha, and the apocrypha does include a number of different books. There's a Psalms of David in meter. That's the iambic pentameter from 1650. So there's a variety of different versions there. Bible.com, and you can just take a look at the different comparative versions there.
I dropped the link, by the way, for you guys.
Yeah, Jason just sent me a link, and I'm scanning
This is
through
what I'm
all the
looking at.
kind of sky clock listings. It's almost amazing to me that the men in black were able to steer the thinking of the so-called masses so easily, because this is clearly talking about the sky clock, and yet everyone was convinced that if you looked up, then you were a sinner, and that was evil.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get back to, Crow. That's the amazing part, right? Is that the story that's told throughout the ages, right, of the Creator is like, hey, don't look there. Like, we're the church now,
Yep.
right? We're the church. We come between you and God, but hey, don't look there. Don't look up.
Can you imagine
Right?
how many
It's
zillions of years
remarkable.
it took, though? Like, think about the people who are living in nature, and this is what they did. This is what they always did. They had to literally beat it out of them. They had to torture it out of them.
Yeah, but some of it, I mean, as we got to the 60s and 70s, listen to this, Revelation 12:1 through 17. And a great sign appeared in heaven. Here's the example I just made. Okay, we're in heaven, right? Everything's beautiful. Yeah. We're in the afterlife. A woman clothed in the sun with the moon at her feet. Okay, wait a minute. I better go back and look at heaven again. So
yeah, that word there,
a great sign appeared in the sky.
Yeah, in fact, that word there is a Greek word, and that is actually the firmament. So that's above the sky, but below the heavens. So it's got a specific place.
It's got its own problems because it
place,
sounds like you're talking about something solid, which you are, and yet for all these years they were claiming, oh no, that just means sky.
Yeah, exactly. So it's they have done a variety of different things, and if you spend any amount of time really looking at Scripture, and especially translations, what you'll see is that a variety of different people translate things to benefit themselves, as you might well imagine, right? And you certainly see these things with one of the big issues, for example, within Christendom was always sort of like one of the things you mentioned. Of course, I would say within Christendom, within all of spirituality, right? It has to do with the state of the dead and what happens to you when you die. And there are different ideas even within Christianity, right, about what happens there. There's evidence in Scripture that you just go to sleep, right? That you just go into Abraham's bosom and you're kind of a comfortable dreaming state. And then there's other evidence, that you go different places. Like there's all kinds of evidence, and it all seems to be somewhat contradictory. But what the part there is that depending on, again, whom you ask and their translation, they used optimism or confirmation bias to very clearly say things that are when you read the original language, it seems intentionally obtuse. It seems like it was intended to be pretty vague. And then what they do instead is to very clearly say something, and they change completely the meaning. And I mean, it's overt, right? You can see this in a variety of different places. So basically the denomination that translated it was uncomfortable with the way that landed. So they essentially just changed it to whatever they wanted to say. And we see this in a variety of different places. There is, I'd have to pull up a couple of those different ones, but specifically there is 3 or 4 different places like that on a variety of different topics that are have arguments back and forth within Christendom, and different denominations have translated Scripture.
Here's the problem, man. It's all dishonest. So here I am in the 1599 Geneva online, which is what people are using now that are actually trying to learn something, because clearly when you go to the 1599 Geneva, you're not reading the NIV or just taking KJV at its word. You're checking, right? So, canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth? Oh, wait a minute. There's a note here. What does Mazzaroth mean? Certain stars, so-called, some think they were 12 signs. All right, then we go on. Canst thou also guide Arcturus with his sons? So, there's a footnote on Arcturus, which is the brightest star, and Boades, the herdsman, the shepherd. And it says here in the footnote for Arcturus, the North Star with those that are about him. No, Arcturus is not the North Star. Polaris is the North Star. Right. Arcturus is adjacent in the sign, not zodiacal sign, in the constellation of Boades the herdsman, the shepherd, basically. It's not that hard to understand that they're fibbing.
It's interesting
telling lies.
And it's interesting in some places too, because if you go, for example, in the 4th chapter of Revelation, it describes seeing the Ancient of Days and sitting on the throne, and depending on, again, which version you look at, each of them use a series of stones to describe the nature of the colors and what it looks like. And yet each description, as you go through the different translations, are fairly different. In that they're all using colored stones to describe it, and yet all the colors can be somewhat different. When you go back to the original words and you try to figure out why that is, again, that was written in Greek, and some of those words, they know it was a gemstone, they just don't know what its direct translation was, right? So they're like, I don't really know. And so again, even though Greek is a living language, some of those descriptions do seem to be lost at time. It was just a description for, like, for example, a gemstone. They just don't know, right? And so some of those things do get kind of, again, lost to idioms, lost to iconography, this sort of stuff. And some of it does seem to be directly, intentionally designed to mislead people. Yeah.
You think? I mean, even the footnotes in these religious sites are still basically not being honest.
Well, maybe they're pulling the old Ben Kenobi and just saying from a certain point of view.
No, you can't do it. You want to call Arcturus the North Star, you're lying. And they're doing it in a sly way because they're calling it the North Star with his sons. So it's actually the other way around. Polaris is the North Star, and maybe you could call Arcturus one of his sons because it's a star in the vicinity. If you wanted to be, poetic in the way you're delivering, it's still a lie. Why are you hiding that? What difference does it make if someone knows that is the star in the herdsman? The shepherd. Oh, maybe that's why they're hiding it. I'm just saying.
Should we go through some more of these? We could do right here. Genesis 1:14. And God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years."
You just got told that astrology
clock.
Matters.
Yes, the signs and seasons.
It just told you that astrology matters, and since the only signs we have are the zodiacal signs, everything else is a constellation. He basically just told you to pay attention to the 12 signs.
Well, right out front, it says, there it is. It says, oh, by the way, these are for signs and seasons and days and years. You might want to pay attention here.
It is.
All right, let's see. Psalm 147:4. He determines the number of the stars. He gives to all of them their names.
Yeah, he also says that he knows. He also says that he knows all of them by name, right?
He
So
says that about his angels too, right?
yes,
Or his sentient planets.
right. I don't think sentient planets, but sentient beings, perhaps. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty common again within, for example, the major Old Testament prophet Daniel. Refers to most of the wise men, generally calls them astrologers, and conjurers, diviners, and Chaldeans, right? So the astrologers basically was the
chief
term.
Astrologers of all time, according to history.
Yeah, that's basically the term that they use. So, and again, we were told from most of the ancient materials that, again, Abraham, who was the father of three major religions, was a primary astrologer, right? And if you go back to look at the book, I believe it's Maccabees, which is one of the apocryphal books. At his birth, and this is where they go all the way back to Tubal-Cain. You'll note that that name show up.
Inventor of everything.
Yeah, there was a astrological sign, a star that appeared at his birth, and the astrologers told the king Tubal-Cain and Abraham's dad, and he was Abram when he was born. His dad was one of the major viziers for the king, and they told him that this is a bad sign for you, O King Tubal-Cain, that this guy will fuck up your kingdom royally. And so he basically tried to buy the kid from his dad. Said, "Tell you what, I like you, so I'll pay you for it."
Gotta love it.
You gotta love it. Yep. And so
Send me your children.
And yeah, so what he did, essentially, the story goes that he took one of his servants' kids who had just 3 days prior had a baby. So took their kid instead, sold it to him. He killed it right in front of him, smashed his head into the ground. He's a really nice guy, and said, "Okay, thanks, I appreciate that." And then finds out, some 20 years later, that he did not actually kill the right guy. That's a whole big hairy story. But I think the apocryphal book of Maccabees, I believe, is where that story is told. Fascinating stuff. But Tubal-Cain, is that character.
The apocrypha. A lot of Catholic Bibles have the apocrypha in them, or people who are Catholic, because I have a version or two of that.
Yeah,
Maccabees
interesting.
is in it. A few books are in it.
Why would that be so? Why would the Catholics do that?
It's interesting. They draw a number of different prayers out of it. They have very specific prayers. So most Protestant
Is this where they get a lot of the
denominations-
angel names and stuff from, now that I think about it?
It is, yeah. That's where they get a lot of the angel and demonology.
Yeah,
both come from, and they have
That's all
hierarchies.
based. Isn't most of that based in Kabbalistic or Hebrew or Kabbalistic? Doesn't that always
Much
root
of it
back
does.
that way? Yeah.
Yes, much of it does come from there in the Book of Solomon, and that is part of the Apocrypha as well. So it comes from, that's a root source as well. So there's a variety of the ancient Kabbalistic traditions, Jewish lore. For example, Lilith is part of that tradition. There's a lot of stuff that's what we call extra biblical, that doesn't appear anywhere in those traditions or the Apocrypha, the other specific books of the Apocrypha, but that do appear in Kabbalistic and other Jewish mythos.
Would it
for
be fair to
example,
say that there's some Apocrypha that's less Apocrypha?
Yes. Yeah, I guess it would be fair to say
Actually,
that.
some of the Apocrypha gets treated more seriously than actual canonized.
Well, it does. In fact, Jesus quotes from the Book of Enoch, as well as his brother James quotes from the Book of Enoch, and the Book
Wouldn't
of
that stand to
Maccabees.
say that's important then? Sorry to interrupt, but like that
It does
really
give it
strikes
weight.
me as like,
Depends
well,
what
hey, if
corporation
the
you're
savior
worshiping with.
figure is using it, it might matter.
It does give it some weight. Yes. Yes, it does give it some
By
weight.
the way, Jason, Adam got remarried, right?
No. See, I'm not a Bible scholar, so this is kind of a fun conversation with me because I'm not sitting here going, "Oh, I know all this stuff." I don't know all this stuff.
What is the I haven't.
Well,
looked.
Lilith,
What is the actual? Yeah.
Well, Lilith I thought was the first wife.
Well, there's problems.
According to the
if you go
Jewish
back
thing.
to Genesis,
Oh,
there's
okay.
2 creation stories told. Most people don't know, and most people don't know half the things they should know. Like when the ark, did you know that they take 2 of all the unclean beasts? You know how many of the clean beasts they take? 7 pair.
That makes sense.
So it's, all these pretty major things, but Lilith is like after the two, the creation story with Adam and Eve is told twice. And
But
then,
but Lilith isn't in the Bible at all. She's
No.
part of
No.
she's
so
part
what
of
I'm saying is there's two creations and then there's Lilith. Or maybe I've got that backwards. Maybe the Hebrews think, no, they know that even the Hebrews say Lilith comes after Eve, right?
No, they say she came first. So
okay, that's
Who
right.
would she be then, though? If
but there's
Eve was
another
supposed to have been
another
created?
tradition too. There's another Hebrew tradition that holds that that the serpent. So in Christian tradition, it's sort of I don't know, assumed, but it's never explicitly stated that the serpent is the devil. It never explicitly says that. There's some stuff because it calls it Nakash, the shining one. There's some interesting study that has to go along with that, but
So
it
it's
never
more implied, is what you're saying?
I'm sorry.
It's more implied than anything?
It is more implied. There's an implicature there, but it never explicitly says so. Never.
More tradition, I would say. Someone put it into the dialectic and it ran with it.
Well, there's some interesting stuff there, Crow. So it has to do, again, some fascinating stuff having to do with the shining one as a way that Nakash can be interpreted. Has to do sort of, again, with some of these ideas of reptilian sort of stuff. And because it says, the serpent was the most crafty of all the beings that the God created, including man. It didn't disinclude man from that, but it did say that man had been given sovereignty, and so that it says that at the that he cursed them, and he said that you will, your seed and her seed. Well, if we read that to say that it's the devil, well, then that can't really be that, because we're also told that he was a fallen angel, and then angels, again, generally don't procreate except for this Genesis 6 thing where they came down and did this, the Watchers. So this interesting circuitous route there, but again, it says that the seed will be enmity with one another, that the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent would be fighting against one another. But anyway,
isn't there a smash your head, bite your heel reference around there?
Yes,
somewhere?
there is. Yes, there is. So there's, in fact, I'm going to just go to it, really. I think it's Genesis 4 is where we find that, or actually at the end of 3. So because you've done this is Yahweh God said to the serpent, because you've done this, you'll be cursed more than any domesticated animal and more than any wild animal. On your belly you will go, and dust you will eat all the days of your life, and I will put hostility.
Another one bites the dust.
And I will put hostility or enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and between her offspring. And he will strike you on the head, and you will strike him on the heel. Again, this sort of implies, if you want to take it that way, that they might be subterranean or beneath the heel of the man. There'd be enmity that way.
Operative word might.
Oh yeah, I mean, again, this is all.
They say it or they don't, man. They say it or they don't.
Speculation. I mean, it's so. Again, I guess you could say it's there, but it's not explicitly said. And that's with a lot of this stuff, right? There's some implicature that's never explicitly said. But on the ground shall be cursed on your account, and your pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. This way your brow you shall eat bread. This is the man because he did this. So this is this original story here, right? And that's from starts at Genesis 1, goes through Genesis 4 with Cain and Abel, and then you get back to the second story.
Well, you should have pulled it through to Tubal-Cain, because then we get entertainment, right?
Yeah.
After
right.
Tubal-Cain, we get entertainers.
And we know how important Tubal-Cain is to the entertainers.
Well, he invented musical instruments too, right? That was one of the things he invented, I believe.
He was
busy.
No, it was another Cain. I'm trying to remember
but
the
the
other
line
guy's name.
thereof.
Yeah, he was from the line. Yes,
I'm pretty sure it's Tubal, isn't it? Isn't it Tubal that made metal? He made musical instrument. There's a whole list of things.
I think it was one of his offspring, one of his kids
Really?
that did the musical instruments.
I don't know if I can buy. I gotta check.
I'm looking right.
I'm going to check too.
I could have swore that was Tubal.
Known for being the first blacksmith, he is stated as the forger of all instruments of bronze and iron.
Instruments of bronze and iron. So what's that? The first horns? Is that where that's coming from? He made the first trumpet?
Well, that's. I thought the trumpets were in heaven.
Not before Tubal-Cain.
Let's see. I'm in the right neighborhood.
So while you guys are looking that up, I'll go to the next passage here. Psalm 19:1. That should pique Crow's interest. To the choir master, a psalm of David. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. That one sounds familiar, doesn't it, Crow?
Yeah, but read it in, go to like the Geneva or the KJV and read it.
Let's see, Psalm 19:1. I don't know which version this is. Maybe that's what does ESV mean? Does that tell me which version this is supposed
English,
to be?
Yeah, English Standard Version.
Yeah, in other words,
Goobert.
Low red version.
The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they display knowledge. There is no speech or language where their voice is not heard.
Yeah, there we go. It's Jubal-Cain, not Tubal. Jubal, Jubal, the father of all who played stringed instruments and wind instruments.
So is that just a play on Tubal getting a J instead of a T, or is that a new character on the stage?
It's a new character. It's one of the offspring of Enoch. Enoch was the father of those who...
I'm still saying he made instruments of brass and bronze, so I'm still saying.
So then Zillah gave birth to Tubal-Cain, who forged all kinds of tools of bronze and iron. And the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. It does differentiate them.
All right, so I think this is the version you're looking for.
I wasn't there, so I don't know.
May have been. You never know.
Where's the version that calls the heavens the firmament?
The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork.
That'd be the King James Version.
Is that KJV?
19:1.
Yeah, 19:1.
Psalm 19:1.
So there it is. There's the kind of authoritative we live in the Western world version of life coming out of the KJV. I wonder what the 1611 says. Can you find it in the 1611?
Yeah, let's see if we can.
You might just get stuck with KJV. I'm not seeing a 1611 in my list.
Oh, here we go. Does this one have it? Ah.
But I do see Geneva 1599.
Oh, check this out. Here, let me share this with you guys. Tonight we have Bible study on the fly.
So here, even the Geneva says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth the work of his hands. I love that. The reason we're reading this, everybody, just so you know, is Werner von Braun, the NASA lackey and Walt Disney actor, assured us all that he made Saturn V rockets and that we left this world and left our alembic sealed system and went to a place called space. But then when he died, on his deathbed, he left Psalm 19:1, which is a 9/11 code, by the way. And that tells us that the glory of God can be seen in the firmament.
The firmament.
So, yeah. So what was it, Werner? Did you make rockets that went to space, or did God make a firmament? And I guess I'll go with the one you did on your deathbed, because that's what you want people to remember.
Well, let's go through the 6 passages all together here, because this is kind of interesting. Let's go down here, because this is the 1611 version I found. So, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun.
Tabernacle's basically a tent, right, dude?
Table, isn't it?
No, it's a tent. Pretty sure it's a tent.
Yeah, it's a tent. It's a meeting, a tent of meeting.
It's a spiritual tent. How about that?
A tent of meeting. That's almost a direct translation.
I was under the impression it was something else, like almost like an altar.
Tabernacle?
Well, this isn't Saturday morning cartoons, but I'll say it anyhow. Now you know.
Okay, well, this is why I thought that. So definition 1 is a fixed or movable habitation, typically of light construction. Second one is a meeting place for worship used by Protestants or Mormons.
Well, think about when this was supposedly written. We're talking about a tent here.
A tent of meeting.
Could be.
Yes, and that's what it.
Well,
that's what
it could
is.
also be that they were doing both. Yes, it was a place for
Probably a yurt, but that doesn't sound very Hebrew. So.
Actually, though,
a yurt. What?
The yurt thing. There is a guy, and I need to find his name every time I try to keep looking for
yurts.
it. So this guy, and I'll try to find it. So let's see, what was his? He's an engineer and also was studying Hebrew, and so he was studying the original tabernacle, right, which is the tent of meeting that was set out in the wilderness. And most indications give that as a big rectangle, but they were very stringent on what the materials that they could use. And he said you couldn't do that with those materials. You'd have to have things that aren't listed, and that wouldn't work. And so he started putting it together, and what he comes up with is a yurt. Now, what's interesting to that is that it has always been given as a description that the tabernacle was given as a representation of as above, so below, that it was representing both heaven and earth. And if you look at it in the terms of the snow globe version of the world, that becomes very interesting. And I'm trying to find this guy's information so I can drop it in the chat. It's very, very interesting what he came up with. He was just taking all the materials to put together what that tent would look like. It basically a 6-story yurt. That's what he came up with.
A 6-story yurt.
Yeah.
Sounds,
So they have a tent with floors. That's rich.
That's
well, it wasn't floors, but it was 6 stories high, and so it was described that they were, it was very impressive out in the wilderness. Which
a tent with a really high peak, in other words.
Yeah, and it would have a hole there right above where the
Holy of Holies is sitting.
Yeah, it
there.
would be. Yeah,
So
exactly.
Binoculus.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what we're looking at, my friend.
There it is.
Side note, did any of you guys look at the clip I sent earlier, the iPet Goat 3?
Yeah, what's that about?
I don't know. I just had someone send that to me today. Thank you very much to who did that. It's pretty messed up, though, isn't it?
What wasn't the first one supposed to be drawn from what had happened based on Pet Goat? Then the second one a similar thing? Because this looks like it's trying to be prophecy or something.
Right. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I only watched it once because then I had to go out for a bit. But I'd like to look at it, and I got to look up why these things are being made in the first place, because it's a different what do you call it, computer animation house that made this one than the first one, but they used a similar styling with the Jesus figure and all that. So I don't know. I got to find out more about it. But anyway, let me find a link for everybody so they know what the hell I'm talking about. This is a really messed up thing. It's got that same creepy feeling to it like the iPet Goat 2 does, though. Same kind of weird, messed up music.
I thought the first animation was tied directly to the events of 9/11 and the fact that the president was reading Pet Goat.
Yeah.
Is that wrong?
That's what the reference is to. Like iPet Goat is, or My Pet Goat, or whatever the original is called. That's first animation is called iPet Goat 2, referring to the fact that Bush was reading the first one.
So then there was another one which had taken a little further, but this one just feels like it's trying to be prophecy. I mean, what else could it be?
Well, the iPet Goat 2 was very prophetic as well.
Was it right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, big time. Let me see if I can find.
So
this
wait a
one.
minute. It came
it's
out.
right if you look
before
at
the
it in
event.
an.
It came out first.
If you look at it in a Nostradamus kind of way, it's right.
Yeah, but did it come out before the events it portrayed?
Many of them, yes. Not all of them.
Okay, so
I didn't know all that. I don't surf the internet. See what I know.
And I posted in the chat if you want it again. It's Andrew Hoy, Hoy, project314.org. He's the guy, and the reason it's 314 is because basically it turned that's pi, and that's the shape of what he came up with is basically a big yurt. So if you're interested in that, take a look. Andrew Hoy, project314.org.
Okay, so the link I just put in, that is for the second one, and now I'm going to drop the link for the new one that I just sent to everybody today. Let me copy this. And again, I don't know anything about this stuff yet. I got to find out, but it's super creepy. It's only a couple minutes long, too.
Here's one for you. Revelation 9:11.
Yeah.
And they have a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon.
Abaddon.
And in Greek, he's named Apollyon. We're going to try to hide
Apollyon.
that from you folks.
Or
It's
in
actually
Latin,
Apollo.
destroyer.
That
Yeah,
is destroying.
That is
It's
destroyer.
actually added on here for some reason in italics. So
exactly.
they did an add-on. That's funny.
Yes, that is.
They're always obscuring things. Why don't they just say Apollo in Greek?
I don't know.
Apollyon. Yeah, because they got to lead the sheep to a different paddock. The wrong paddock.
Oh, is this link not working? Copy link location.
I wonder how many 9/11s there are. And has anyone ever done a count to see how many 9/11s are in the Bible? Let's see. Matthew 9:11. Matthew 9:11. And when the Pharisees saw that, they said to his disciples, "Why eateth your master with publicans and sinners?" Or I guess it means, why do you eat with him and there's publicans and sinners around? Let me see if there's another 9/11. Well, actually, if that was Matthew, let's see what Mark 9:11 is. Does it match?
No.
They asked him, saying, "Why say the scribes that Elijah must come first?" So what's the 9/11 from Mark?
I wonder where
No, let's do John, because John's always the one that's not synoptic.
Psalm 9:11 is sing praises to the Lord, which dwells in Zion, declare among the people his doings.
His doings?
His doings.
Luke, wasn't Luke supposed to be a doctor written by a doctor? Isn't that the story?
He is Luke is the physician, yes.
John's my favorite. The other three are synoptic.
He is my favorite. Yeah,
which means to say seeing with one eye, I guess.
Yeah, I like John. He describes himself as the disciple that Jesus loved, and you can see that the way he wrote it seems indicative of that. He definitely had a.
Boy, this one's hardcore. In Luke, it's then Herod said, "John have I beheaded." So that's John the Baptist, I suppose. Who then is this of whom I hear such things? And he desired to see him. Don't they put the head on a silver platter? You'll be seeing him soon enough.
There's certainly a platter. I don't know about a silver platter, but a charger, yes. Proverbs 9:11.
I thought that's where we got the old cliche served up on a silver platter was from John the Baptist.
It doesn't explicitly say so. Again, that may be somebody's tradition, but it doesn't explicitly say so. Proverbs 9:11, for by me thy days shall be multiplied, and the years of thy life shall be increased. That's
Here we go. Hebrews 9:11. Hebrews 9:11 is, but Christ being come and high priest of good things to come, by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, or tent, not made with his hands, that is, not of this building. I guess that doesn't make sense out of context of what's before and after it. Boy, there's a few that don't make it to 9. Corinthians has a couple 9s.
Yeah, 2 Corinthians has a 9.
Talks about his benevolence. Micah, here's one. Hosea has a 9. Talks about remembering their iniquity. What's Gibeah? The days of Gibeah? What is that? What's Gibeah? Is that a place?
I think it was somebody's name. 1 Kings 9:11, and they shall answer, because they forsook the Lord their God, which brought forth their fathers out of the land of Egypt, and have taken hold upon other gods, and have worshipped them and served them. Therefore hath the Lord brought them out upon this evil.
Well, that's interesting. I went all the way back to Genesis, and Genesis 9:11 is the covenant about the flood. And my covenant will I establish with you, that from henceforth all flesh shall not be rooted out by the waters of the flood, neither shall there be a flood to destroy the earth anymore. That's kind of interesting.
It is interesting.
That would fall in Genesis 9:11. If I'm not mistaken, this will relate to the rainbow, which comes to the sky. Every time you see a rainbow, it's supposed to be God's covenant that he won't kill the world with a flood anymore, or something like that.
Yeah, this is his covenant that he would not destroy the entire world with a flood again. That's the rainbow.
I wonder if he knew it was going to become the gay, lesbian, and all the other acronym flag.
Well, if you see it the way I do, yes, right. That he doesn't see it in a linear way. It's more of a tangential,
Romans
physical way.
9:11.
Did I tell you guys that I was back in these old alchemical texts, and it claims that in the change of every single age, androgyny will be there. Have you ever heard that before? You know the alchemical sign for androgyny, where it's like a figure with a man and a head and both sets of genitals, a breast on one side. That's their symbol for androgyny, or one of the symbols. Apparently, in the alchemical tradition, every time there's a changing of an age, that symbol gets put into use, because they are claiming that in every age change, androgyny will be prevalent. I thought that was interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
That was certainly one of the things when I started looking at the, the transvestigation. And some people were really into
You
it.
caught me! I'm really a woman!
No. But that was
a shrubbery.
a shrubbery. That was one of the knights who said, "Neat."
Yeah, don't be a knight that says knee.
Yeah,
Say elbow.
Exactly. So, but yeah, in any case, in looking at it, that was one of the more interesting facets of it to me. Had less to do with gender even than their view. That is the Luciferian take of it being an apotheosis, and the very old view. That, like Janus, it was originally a two-spirited being, and it was this division of male and female, according to their tradition, which separated them and began having two genders. And then by putting them back together, that would somehow bring about an apotheosis. And so
putting the
big
rib
props
back into Adam, is that the idea?
Yeah. So they give big ups to the androgyne. So with that being the case, certainly I can see that creating a sacrifice, a child sacrifice, if you will, and starting very early at to do a transition rather than sacrifice the mortal life of your child. I could certainly see that being an easier choice to make and serve the same purpose. So. Yeah, that was one of the areas that I went, interesting, right? I probably wouldn't have given it as much, credence as I did once I came upon how they view it, right? The way they see it. So,
for my part, man, I'm all about what the Christian mystics are laying down, like A.S. Raleigh and those guys. Those dudes are so sweeping in their knowledge, and it doesn't matter where the knowing or the spiritual tradition came from. It could be from the furthest corner of the earth, and they know about it, and they incorporate it, and they respect it. They take it all seriously. But I got to take Blix out, so I'll be right back.
Okay.
Well, I'll save this then. The KJV Romans 9:11. I'm sure Crow will love this.
Yeah, the Essenes, which were some of the, I don't know, as differentiated from the early Christian Gnostics, they weren't really, I wouldn't say you would put them in the Christian category so much as they were, they followed what they considered the way, and so their beliefs were very similar to, I would say, that of what Jesus taught, but without all the catechism to go around it. But they did definitely have some interesting views that differed in some cases pretty dramatically from the Jewish tradition, and again, seemingly fairly consistent with previous scripture, like Book of Enoch, that sort of stuff. So I don't know. In the study that I do, more so even than Gnostics, the writings of the Essenes are probably the closest that I see to the way that I read it. But again, that's the way that I read it. Are you waiting for Crow to come back to read that Romans 9:11? Was that what you were saying?
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, I'll wait till he gets back so that
okay,
we can all talk about that. I was just looking a little more of these lovely cartoons here. I was trying to find one that's not watermarked, but I want to go through these because who the hell is making this shit? I mean, come on.
Oh, dear.
All right, where's that other version? I had another version that was not watermarked. What's interesting is the The animation's different on this one. It's not quite as good as the other one that's 5 years old. For whatever reason.
And this is the iPet Goat 3.
That the third one does not look as good as the second one. Not that it looks bad, but as far as like the rendering, it just looks like the second one had a lot more
time spent on it.
Yeah, time. You know how computer stuff is. The more you put into your texturing, the better it's going to look when it renders.
Yeah. Again, the
this
rendering
one looks
process.
a little less
textured. Yeah.
Defined. I guess I'm trying to think of the word that would work.
Some of the shading isn't quite as detailed, and
the detailing in general isn't quite there. I mean, yes, clearly the figures are Trump and Putin. Like, you can't miss them, but on the other one, it just looks more. I don't know, just more better. It's more apocryphal as opposed to less apocryphal.
There you go.
Right,
this is more or less apocryphal. Right?
Let's talk about those a second then, because I don't know that much about them. I know the general notion is that at the Council of Nicaea they decided what was going in the Bible and what wasn't, right?
Right, they canonized particular books.
But why?
Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of reasons given for that. I'm trying to remember which of the 14 books. There's Esdras and Maccabees. I think Esther, Bell and the Dragon, Judith. I can't remember them all. Anyway, supposedly, insofar as I can recall, Jason, the reason they pulled some of them out is that they just said that there was some ideas in there, or there were some traditions that was inconsistent with some of the rest of them. Particularly, I think Book of Thomas. Gospel of Thomas, that sort of stuff. There was also the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, I think, and they, they give problems with some of the traditions.
I remember that differently, dude. So the word apocrypha is well, I think what's the singular? Apocryphon would be single. Apocrypha is plural, which means many, so it's a few books. I think it was originally, they were writings that were too high for the masses, and they could be misconstrued, which is kind of what you're saying. But the idea and why it wasn't canonized into the, all the books of the Bible was because it was reserved out for special Christian initiates, because they were secret teachings. That's the way that I remember that.
See, that's that may be one narrative of it. This again, that I understand, apocrypha means basically erroneous or in error. They were considered not genuine, and so there was some argument over whether or not they were actually could be genuinely extant material ascribed to the original source, and most of them couldn't. There is even there's a question still remaining on whether, for example, Paul wrote some of the Gospels that are, or rather some of the letters that are ascribed to him. But in terms of the Apocrypha being secret teachings that were kept away from anybody but the initiates, again, certainly not that I'm aware of. I mean, insofar again as the Christian tradition that I'm aware of, Crow, is that they were considered kind of not genuine, or they had held some ideas that were considered to be not consistent with the rest of their narrative. That's again my understanding.
So if we take apart the word, and if I'm not mistaken, apocryphon is the singular. So when we say apocrypha, we're saying plural. So that includes the many. So if we took the prefix apo, that means away. If we take the other one, which comes from Greek, the rest of that, krypha or kryptine, it would be to hide or conceal. So originally, apparently, the word meant
isn't that writing?
It was a text. Well,
a way of writing. Writings that's a way.
No, kryptine would be Kryptein, but I see where you're going there. But originally, the meaning of the word would have been, these texts are too sacred for profane masses to get their hands on, basically. In other words, these are not for the hands of everyone, so they're hidden away for those that are worthy or initiated, or however you would put. That's the original meaning.
I could see how that story might get created, but I see nothing in them that would indicate that.
That's the meaning of the word. I drew that from the meaning of the frickin' word.
Okay, but
words have meaning. That's all I'm saying. You don't got to accept it. I'm just saying that's the meaning of the word derives out that way.
Let me look more closely at the Greek, because as I'm reading it, it looks to say it's a separate or a way writing.
I just looked it up. So apocryphal comes from the original Greek, which I can't pronounce because it's written in Greek, was first applied to writings which were kept secret. So there it is again.
Well, I get that, but I'm not. Again, I'm not gonna just go straight for Wikipedia though. I'm gonna
I'm not in Wikipedia, and by the way, that's the meaning of the word. You can look it up in 5 places. Okay, let's do the etymology.
Are we having fun?
Yeah, I'm not. No, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying it. I just want to look at it more closely, because certainly, again, that's not a story that I'm familiar with. But again, I can see how that. Yeah.
Here's the etymology. Okay, so it claims that it's come through Greek into Latin to end up being apocrypha as we say it. It comes originally from the Greek apokryputine, or the word I was saying earlier, late Middle English. And so what it basically means is an ecclesiastical Latin apocrypha or scripta is hidden writings. The Greek original meaning would be to hide away. So I don't know how we ditch too far from what the word actually means. Just saying.
Well, that is what.
That's just me, man. But I have found extra cocaine in my lifetime.
Mercy.
That is.
It's no longer left over.
So I waited for this for you. We have a Romans 9:11. For the children being not yet born, neither having done any good or evil, that the purpose of God according to election might stand, not of works, but of him that calleth. How do you like them apples?
It's kind of interesting, someone to do a study of all the verses that fit, originally in one of the older versions, to look at all the 9/11 numbered scriptures that scripture to 9/11, or to go back like what Von Braun did. So he's using 19.1, which is an encode of 9/11. Just figure out what they all are. See if there's, who'd be good for that. Baldini'd be good for that.
He would. He's good at that sort of
thing. He
would
be very good at that.
And according to Oxford, their version of it, Crow, is that they so they have the meaning from I'll give you the link here.
Of what? Apocrypha? Is that where we're at?
Yeah, Apocrypha, as being the hidden, being sort of like hard to understand. And they're going with, and this is kind of, again, the way that I had understood it, is that they had put them aside as being of doubtful authorship or authenticity, and that's the last paragraph.
I would say, based on everything we just looked up, that sounds like a cover story for "Don't Look Here."
Probably.
You special people being initiated will put it in your hand.
Probably. I don't dismiss that at all. Right. I'm just saying this is the story that I know.
One thing about the Bible is and this is problematic because, as everyone here knows, depending on the version you get, depends on what translation or words you might get. So in my view, as always, older is better. But if you can't go old, just go King James. If you can't go old, just go Geneva, because it's old on the face of it. My point being is words have meaning, and you get to a word like Mazzaroth, and most people are reading the Bible and they think, oh, Mazzaroth, that's a biblical fancy sounding word. Oh, I wonder what it means, and they keep reading. No, dude, that means Zodiac. So if they would stop and look up the word, get the etymology, and start to get an idea, wait a minute, this is about stars. Wait a minute, this is about 12 particular sets of stars, then they start to know some things. And this has been... Our lazy bone has made us so hurtable because the man in black sat up there and he read Mazzaroth and nobody raised their hand.
Yeah,
basically.
And often too, right? There's a lot of stuff that I've discovered that is idiomatic. right? And it has very specifically to do with a saying that they would have at the time, that we would have no comprehension of at all. There's a couple of things that in the New Testament that Paul said specifically that would been a phrase that would been somebody would have said. And I found one that Jesus said specifically too, and during the Last Supper, for example, when he said, drink this, drink all of it, right? Basically, what he said there was an idiom that means bottoms up. Right, come pie, right? He's not just saying drink all. He said like bottoms up, right? It's a saying, right? It would be an idiom, and so we miss a lot of the stuff. I've found when I go.
That's a key point. Have you read the Lamsa Bible? Anyone who's interested in Western religious tradition should read the Lamsa Bible. Here's the claim: the Lamsa Bible is claimed to have been written by a man who lived in a village that spoke Aramaic, no different than the supposed time of the writing of the Bible all the way up to World War II. And he used his knowledge of the traditions of that village, which he claimed their houses were still set up in the same way in the small village and everything, all the way up to near World War II. And he goes through and says things like the scripture that talks about it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to heaven. He says that doesn't mean what you've been told at all. It's an idiom. It's like me now saying bats in the belfry to someone back then. They'd be thinking, well, what the hell's a belfry and why are there bats in it? Where everyone here listening knows I just called someone crazy. That's an idiom, you see. And so in the Lamsa Bible, he's retranslated all the supposed Aramaic parts and identified idioms and other. It's all I'm saying is if you're going to study this and you want to know some things, why wouldn't you go for a good broad swath so that you can at least make educated decisions?
It's not just important, it's critical, right? Because again, you're gonna run up on stuff that says like, "Oi, my dogs are barking." And you're like, why? What has to do with his dogs? And they're making sound? No, my feet hurt, right?
And if you don't research it, the man in black will say, "Sit down, my dog. I'm speaking."
Exactly, right? Mm-hmm. So
you can either be herded around like a sheep, or you can apply yourself like a human being and test what you're being told for authenticity.
Right. This is from my perspective, right? Why it's so important to. Why truth has its own ring of frequency to it, right? Its own vibration, and why it's so important to connect with the Creator. Because if you take any writing from anybody, any time, right, and try to make a religion out of that, it's always subject to interpretation, and you're always going to get people that believe whatever they want. Right, they're going to turn it to make. I mean, isn't the Bible a great example of that? It's pretty close. No matter how many translations we have. There's some 80 some English translations on Bible.com, right, that have been done over the past certainly what they tell us 1,000 years or so, 1,200 years ish, something like that, and they're pretty close. They're not identical, but they're pretty close. If that can be tortured into saying, we've got more than 1,000 different denominations, right?
Is that all?
Half of it is used by one religion, right? That doesn't recognize the other half. So you got the Arabs, or you got Islamists who don't recognize Jews. You got Jews who don't recognize Christians. You got Catholics who don't recognize Protestants, and you got Mormons who don't recognize each other at Hooters. Mm-hmm. No, that wouldn't run right over your head. But no, but basically they all work from the same book, and yet they all are willing to kill each other, right, over what they believe. And what I'm getting to, right, is that if you're going to make that into a religion, any writing, you're going to sit down and turn that into a religion, right, then people are going to make that interpret to whatever they want it to say, right? And that it doesn't matter. I mean, there's an enormous amount of wisdom in there, and I pull it out. I mean, I do a weekly stream every Sunday morning, right, just reading from it as a book of wisdom. So there's plenty of it in there. But when you, again, take it as a religion, you're going to bump into some trouble.
I just posted a link, but I just realized it's only the New Testament. I'm pretty sure Lamsa did the Old Testament too. I read it, I don't know, end of the 90s, maybe 98, 96, 98. I read it, so I'm reasonably sure there. If you search around, you could find that Lamsa did the Old Testament too. I think a lot of people had problems with it because they found that things that were being pushed forward as prophecy, he said, you misunderstood because I speak the language. And so that caused a lot of infighting because people want to believe what they want to believe, which doesn't make a lot of sense. Wouldn't you
Well,
really?
some of the biggest infighting that goes on is within the Christian community. Man, you get amongst the group of those people talking about what the book of Revelation means.
Oh boy.
You can be entertained for hours.
So let's do that. Revelation 12, 1:17.
Go read Meditations on the Tarot, but go ahead, Jason.
And a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pains and the agony of giving birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads 7 diadems. His tail swept down a third of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, he might devour it. She gave birth to a male child, one who was to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. But her child was caught up to God and to his throne.
You know who would be useful taking things like that, or one version of taking that apart, is Dylan that we had on. His books are Spirit World. You look up, and they're on Amazon and other places. But he does a fantastic job of winnowing out sky clock references and encoded references from places like Revelation, based on the old natural science ideas, which almost anyone in initiated positions will tell you this is one of the levels of meaning there. By the way, a lot of this stuff has a lot, like, I don't know, is there more meaning than we'll ever know because we're not initiated? Probably, if I had to guess now. But if you go look at his book, Spirit World, what was the other one called, Jason? What was his name? His name was Dylan Sicaccio.
Yeah.
Dylan.
He's got 3 in the Spirit World series.
Yes. Dylan Sicaccio, there's his thing. And if you want to learn how to use new tools for word splitting and taking apart original meaning of words and getting to the encoded usage and meanings of words, those are works that I think everyone should read. And by the way, he may well have a different spiritual point of view based on his work, but it doesn't matter, man. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. His work on language is
right
par excellence.
Oh, his capability for symbolism, comparison, and contrasting is quite good.
I think it sounds to me like he may speak 3 or 4 languages, Greek being among them. He sure handled
Italian.
Hebrew deftly while we were on there. He absolutely speaks Italian.
Yep.
I think Portuguese, maybe. I don't know. He's quite a bright young man.
Oh yeah, I stay in touch with him. I'm quite fond of him. You don't find cool people like that every day reaching out to you.
No, we had him on twice. Well, what happened was someone sent me his book, and I read it, and then I had you reach out to him, and we've had him on twice. So I'll probably have him back again. It's just hard, because when you're going to talk about the Bible and Christianity, it's not... I know how to thread the needle. A lot of people aren't interested in threading the needle because they think what they think. And I think that's a mistake because it sows division. And I think the last thing we need in this world right now is division. So why can't we talk about a thing for the sake of coming to conclusions that are worthwhile instead of fighting about it?
Well, I agree. Well, people get very hung up on what their particular accepted dogma is, which could be very different than the guy sitting next to him, unfortunately.
Well, that's the whole thing about dogma. That's just like belief. It's a choice. There's no work put in to try to prove it out as being worthy of being accepted. And that's the problem with our world right now. If so many of these things, like look at this stupid mask thing going on. How many people have actually sat down to consider how ridiculous this is? Apparently not enough yet. And this is where we are in the age of knowing, which is where I feel we are pulling into right now. We're not going to be that way anymore. We're going to look at things. We're going to take things. We're going to know things. We're coming from an age of belief where the man in black could stand up there by the altar, hint, 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 and tell you any damn thing he wanted to. And by the way, it would be any damn thing he wanted to. You go to this church, and this style of Christianity, he'll tell you one thing. Go over to this other place, I'll tell you another. Well, what's going on here? What I know to be true is if you tell me one thing and you tell me another and you tell me another and you tell me another and you're all holding the same book, you're all wrong. That's the logical point of view. But we got to get through these things. And this is where we've come to, where all these religions making all these claims, even in the same Christian faith. You have 5 different churches claiming this stuff means something different from each man in black. That's unacceptable. Why would we listen? Why would we listen to these men who don't know any better themselves? Because some man in black taught them what to do.
And that's exactly why I encourage people not to listen to any man, right? If you want to know the truth, go directly to your creator. Ask your creator what this all looks like, and how much of it is valuable, and what should we accept? What should we eat the meat, and where are the bones? I don't think you can go wrong with that. If you trust that the creator.
That's the goal of every spiritual tradition, if you boil it down, or anyone worth a salt. What I noticed is by the time I was at the end of my 30s, I realized, having been raised Christian, Lutheran mostly. Of course, when you get into the Marine Corps, if you're not Catholic, you're like a redheaded stepchild. So there was a lot of Catholicism going on while I was in the Marine Corps.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, they're big on Catholic in the Marine Corps. But they offer, you could go do your Protestant stuff and Jewish stuff. They had them all there, mostly, or the ones that were big enough to have enough people. But what I noticed is every week we went into a room to hear the same damn story told over and over, and some clever witticism told about it. And in no way, shape, or form did I feel like I had gotten an inch closer to the divine nature of what's supposed to be covered. Never. And that's where it started for me. As what are we doing here? We're going to frickin' tell the story of the Ark again today? Why?
Because that's what religion does. It the same as everything else. It leads you further and further away.
That's okay. So let's be honest then. If that's what religion does, then religion is not interested in spiritual development.
Absolutely.
Wait, come on now.
They're a corporation.
Absolutely.
Now, if you want to tell me the story of the Ark again and try to get into the deeper meaning, then maybe I got some time for you. But by the time the 50th time I'm going to hear this damn story told, it's like, dude, I can recite what you're about to read from frickin' memory at this point, damn near.
Well, sure. And I mean, but here's, to me, the problem is that the guy standing up there, he's going to tell you what that means, right? It's like, to me, the whole thing is an invitation to talk to the creator and go, hey, what does this mean? Right? What do I do with this? And I find an enormous amount of value in that. And
why does it even matter what a bunch of dead dudes did so many millennia ago, according to their timeline? You know, if you really want to look at it, I'm just saying.
For me, it's helpful, right? I find value in it, but it's not up to me to find the value for other people.
The value is there, but is the value there 56 Sundays from now when you've heard the same story about the dead dudes for the 100th time? Is it still valuable?
In some ways. I mean, I will say that when I read the Bible in particular, but often a variety of different things, but particularly some passages for sure in the Bible, I can read them a dozen times and see it a different way every time. So there is some new life to it, sure, every time. If someone, again, is telling me that they're going to tell me what to make of it, I'm going to have not very much trust in that because I've learned not to trust people, right? I've learned that people have their own reasons for doing things, and they lie, right? People lie, whether that's in religion or science.
They tell you what they were taught, and they don't know any better.
That's almost worse.
Yeah, it's worse because they think they're doing something of value when they're just given the party line.
Same as education, right? Yeah. Same as a PhD. He thinks he's doing a good thing, right? He thinks he's making a difference because he's teaching the young people in the world about physics. And he's teaching about astrophysics, right? And it's mind-blowing stuff. And we're going to learn about the universe. Right. And so he thinks he's actually changing the world and doing good and not realizing the harm that's being done. I'm sure that, again, many people are like that.
That's a thing that'll probably work out, right? All that has to hit the wall. I think that science hits a wall at some point because they act like they're going to infinity and beyond, but they're not. They can't go any further because they believe in things that aren't true. They believe in gravity. They believe in all these things that are provably not true. And so they're going to hit a wall. So that will be, their chaos.
It seems like it. But then again, look at the information that's out there on the Chrononi, right? Is like the information is so preposterous at this point. It's so ridiculous and so nonsensical, prima facie, right on the surface of it. And yet there's an enormous amount of people that are still buying it for what they say. So, certainly we can say.
Schools are going away too, though, aren't they, Baldine? What are 5% of people going to ever get into an Ivy League or less? 2%? The rest are going to be going to New Hampshire online. So the power and reach of that kind of control of thinking, that's going to diminish with the diminishing of schools in the information age. I think the real concern here is what happens to the internet over the long haul. But the truth is even with the internet, people will become disenchanted with Google and Wikipedia, and they'll learn to go deeper. But
I think so. I think some always will. I think there will be a certain amount of people who always do. If you're going to have
flying cars, dude, you're not going to make it with the science we have now.
Well, we may not ever get those flying cars that they promised us. But one thing that seems certain. One thing that seems certain is that the internet is now and always has been entirely within the control of those who we would say are our enemy, right? We certainly get to use it to some degree. It's a library that they've set up that we get to make use of to some degree with lots of nonsense in it. But it's a two-way library, right? They get to see everything about us as well. I don't know that there's much
maybe there's a lot of butlers in the room and we'll have our jihad.
Maybe so.
Yeah, that's
the
possible.
Spice.
Speaking of that, Crow.
Yes.
We recorded a very interesting show with Wayne McCroy. That was yesterday, right, Crow?
Yeah, I think it was.
We've been doing so many lately, I forget.
I can't even keep it straight.
But that's one of the ones coming up that we broke down Star Wars and all the interesting symbolism, predominantly in the originals. But man, that spice thing, that's a thing, right, Frank Herbert?
Oh, it's almost, of all the books I've ever read, that one is the most astonishing by far, because I think it's the 50s. It's published in the 50s, I believe. The things he came up with, how could he possibly have known? And there are so many of those instances where you have to start to suspect, come on, man, is someone peeking at a playbook or what's going on here? Even just the idea of water, but the whole Butlerian jihad, and that is an offhand thing. They don't ever explain it all the way out. They just say, yep, there was this war over computers, and the people who loved computers lost. And by the way, if you got a computer, we'll kill you. That's what they tell you about the Butlerian jihad.
Yeah.
By the way, the witches have them. All the rulers still have computers, but all the people got rid of them.
When you put together, folks like him and Heinlein, and even Lewis, and we got to throw in, of course, Huxley and Orwell, right? So we throw all these guys in there, right? When you see the outcome of what they put together, I can't help but come to the conclusion that they're all been tasked. They've been given the task of writing a script of what it would look like. Right, and these are not amazing shots in the dark, right? These are not prescient guys. These are guys who are tasked with writing the script such that it can be given in advance.
Some of those guys definitely are. We've kind of demonstrated they're in and around the circles of royalty. And actually, if you want to be honest about it, anyone in sci-fi, I guess, could be thrown in exactly the way you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. I think that's what I'm saying is I think that when you put these guys together, right, and going all the way back to Jules Verne, right? How can you
clearly Verne? Yeah.
How can you not, right? Take a look at what he proposed and then see it supposedly come to fruition. Right,
and where's the first time that happens? Is the Lumiere brothers? One of the first things filmed is a bullet getting shot into the eye of the moon.
Right? And look at the scientists. What are they wearing? What are their outfits? Wizards' robes? Yeah. They're wearing wizard outfits,
I thought
right?
they were wearing
Come on.
Jedi robes.
Yeah, they're wizards.
No,
Wizard.
that's right. Before they leave, the guys that go are wearing top hats, but he's right. The cabal that sends them are all wizards.
They're wizards. Yeah, they are.
And then the Smashing Pumpkins redo that whole idea.
Yeah, it's so again, I go back and I to me, my take on it is that almost entirely the genre of sci-fi has been used as a massive Overton window experiment, if you will, from Star Trek to Star Wars.
We showed it to some degree, Baldini, because we did the Amazing Stories, and we showed how that started and how another British plant was, and how every writer, and by the way, the Dune writer dude, he was one of the people. This one guy was like the mentor to almost every great American sci-fi writer you ever saw, but he was responsible for the was it Amazing Stories, Jason? You know that first sci-fi magazine?
That was.
But that was shown, and he was a
Amazing Stories.
Tavistock MI5 or MI6, whatever it is, operative, the dude who controlled all that. So you ain't far off.
Yeah,
and not to put too fine a point on it, right? When you get put sci-fi together with occult and rockets, where do you land up?
In the ocean? No.
I was thinking
Jack
of
Parsons,
a little
maybe.
L. Ron Hubbard and some scientism and some Jack Parsons, right?
Yeah, moon babies.
Those guys, right? So you've got a sci-fi writer going 1-to-1, right, with a religion,
and then ripped him
Right.
off,
yeah.
which is even funnier.
Yeah. So let's not forget that 1-to-1 relationship there. So
I think he did his girl too. Now that I think about
that
it.
whole Scientology thing. Have you guys noticed over the last 10 years how bad Hollywood's tried to rip Scientology apart? And it occurred to me not too long ago. I know why they're doing it, because Scientologies aren't taking a shot and they don't watch TV. And those are the two biggest sins you could commit in the eyes of the mainstream. So in my view, that's why Scientology is being ripped apart.
They still got some dedicated Hollywood celebrities, though, who are absolutely hooked on that stuff.
You don't see a lot of that these days, though, do you? I haven't seen any Tom Cruise.
Well, you don't see a lot of
saying
celebrities,
it's-
period. It's interesting.
used to.
Hollywood is imploding. They incited so much of the crap that has gone on the past year. People figured it out and rejected a lot of their nonsense.
Well, yes, they people have rejected it, but they're acting as though they're oblivious to it. That they continue to do it. Again, you guys have covered this, and many of us have seen it. That when it comes to, for example, film, right? With whether it's television, film, the sci-fi genres, the Marvel Comics universe, that sort of stuff. Again, they don't give a shit about making money.
No.
They're sending a message, and certainly you could take apart. I mean, there's been numerous people have taken apart the recent. The recent heinous fuckery most foul with Doctor Who and what they've done there in terms of being wokety woke and how badly it's imploded, and they don't give a shit, right? They're just gonna keep doing it, right?
Nope,
they don't.
Let's make
care.
another season of this. Nope, let's make another season of this.
Right.
No, I don't get it all.
About that.
I gotta wonder. I brought this up in our Star Wars episode. They lost. Disney, I'm referring to, lost so much over that Last Jedi debacle, and I gotta wonder, did they actually do enough damage that they had to turn around and bring Luke Skywalker back, for real, so that they can try and get people to come back so they can continue their brainwashing? But it also had the benefit of a zillion people signing up for Disney Plus, so it's kind of, again...
They're after the young people that don't even remember very well. They don't remember the originals like we do, or as invested.
Well, it
as
wouldn't have
older
influenced
people
them,
are in the
obviously.
original.
I mean, when we saw this stuff originally, it was like, holy shit.
I think, you know what, if you're talking about he shows up in the little
Mandalorian.
cameo appearance. Yeah, the Mandalorian. I don't know. It's sort of like a bit of hopium, right? To a
It
key
is,
card,
but I follow this
right?
crap, and they really...
It's like
the
yeah,
amount
it's
of
like
people
they,
that got the attention of, a lot of the fans,
Yeah, exactly.
I can't believe
so
it,
many,
but they did.
Yeah, they got so many people that hated it, right? Because they just destroyed this franchise, and then they finally we'll give you just a little bit of hopium, right? Give you the thing that you really used to love, right? Here's a little bit of that. So one more, trust the plan. You know what I mean? It's just one more little bit of trust the plan, and in the end, it's all going to end up in the same dumpster fire.
One movie at a time.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, the thing I was wondering is there a possibility that's like, well, they can't lose too much money. They can lose money.
Yeah, they can print all they want. It's not about money.
But Disney itself can't.
It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter.
Money. You saw the CEO dance that happened at the end of 2019, where they shuffled out all the nearly 300 or over 300 CEOs into the corporations that mattered. At no point was funding going to be the linchpin that broke their little plan.
Yeah.
They were funded from now until kingdom come. And why? Because it's fiat. They just print more. Or they stack a Wall Street trade in a favor, or someone wins a lottery magically in the state of California for $1 billion.
If money actually mattered, Kathleen Kennedy would still be hanging from a tree somewhere.
Well, that one blows my mind, yeah. Like, how woke do you have to be? It's like, oh, we can't fire a woman even though she's the worst executive that ever existed on the face of the earth.
It just continues to destroy
it's just
everything.
Like, how much? And then every time she opens her mouth, she makes it worse.
Well, again, but I mean, think about this. Mentioning this to somebody about politics the other day. Look at it. It's the most god awful. It's like wrestling.
Shit show, I believe, is the word you're looking for.
Yeah,
it's there to destroy itself.
But yes, but they're gruesome caricatures of it, right? It's the most vile, gruesome, bullshit, nonsense character it could ever. It's a caricature of itself.
Well, you're not going to get a man in a white tuxedo to go clean the sewer, are you?
No, but but they're all going to sit there and shit. I mean, if you don't have to sit in shit, you wouldn't. I don't think. I mean, it just seems to me again. It's WWE wrestling in a different outfit. That's it.
Of course it is. It's all a boondoggle. They're going for frickin' Taco Bell.
Exactly.
The corporation that rules the world, and so they're letting these asshats destroy it.
So this is what I go back to the entertainment world, right? Is it the same as the political stage? It is a stage. It doesn't really matter. Politics, again, if politics really mattered, Nancy Pelosi would be hanging from a tree as well as Newt Gingrich and all these other people, right? They would have already long worked itself out.
Well, include the man in orange and the man that preceded him.
Exactly.
I mean, at least have the wherewithal to show that it's holistically bullshit.
Exactly. These things would it would have worked itself out, and it didn't, right? Because he said, "Oh, if I get president, right, you're going to jail." Well, that didn't happen, right? You just sat around and trusted the plan, didn't you? Right? So because it's going to be great, just wait, buy all this popcorn. Right? I guess you bought the toilet paper first. Come on, for fuck's sake, man. Right? Just use your head.
I love popcorn.
Right? It's just like, man, these people are never going to help you. Right? The people at the top are not going to fucking come save you. No. Right? So every time they tell you this bullshit, don't believe it. They're not coming to fucking save you. They're not coming to fix anything. Ain't nobody coming for that.
They're doing the opposite. And by the way, they have classified you as an enemy combatant.
That's right.
That's all you really need to know.
And openly now calling you a domestic terroristic threat.
There you go.
I mean, I've been I make few prognostications, but that's one I have been saying for about 3 years, is that they've been pushing to make that false equivalency between the truth community and domestic terrorism, and they've effectively done it openly now.
And Trump's little stupid minions that just got staged up have facilitated a basic lockdown of everywhere that's a power center. So all these capitals will be cordoned off and armed to the gills. So if there ever came a time in the future when actual real people, not the fake people you just saw on the news, got pissed off and wanted to change things, it just got a lot more difficult. That's what just happened. All these people who can't see the obvious outcome of these things that are done. And I'll tell you another thing. I can't think of a city where more police agencies exist than D.C. and they're acting like they didn't have enough law enforcement to
that's
deal
what
with
told
that
me
small
everything.
gathering.
That was
It's a put-up.
ridiculous. There's
And
no
not
way.
only that, if you want to take it out logically, then that means the sitting president just was involved in sedition or something close. If I'm not mistaken, that's a shooting or a hanging offense on the books still.
Well, either way, they are trying to go after him for.
And I mean, just
a slap on the wrist. It's
no. They're threatening impeachment for the week he's got left.
Who cares?
Yeah, to put a big ice cream cone cap on the preposterous nature of it, right? You got the people, the self-proclaimed patriots, are the ones crying the loudest for martial law.
Yeah,
that's the dimwits.
I mean,
the dimwits who showed up at the Capitol. And by the way, I'm almost convinced that what they did was merge the one side that was supposed to be there for the inauguration type deal, or the supposedly legitimate crowd, and then the other protest. I think they merged those two crowds, to be honest with you. It's a put-up.
Well, yeah.
And it's a put-up to consider that in a place like that, they didn't have more than enough law enforcement to deal with a crowd many times that size. Because guess what happens in D.C.? There are often many crowds many times that size. And people are still caught up in this nonsense to impeach, or it doesn't matter. You're being shown a play for an outcome that they've already got. The outcome is we're going to put howitzers at every capital we really want to protect. So if you want to try to get close to it now, it's going to be a problem. That's basically what's just happened.
Yeah, it's preposterous. That's for sure. I mentioned I can't remember which one it was, but on one of the streams that I did this last week, it just occurred to me. I was like, how RV Russian Vids always says truth in the movies, lies in the news, and I went, I bet when they break out the fake alien invasion, you want to know how that's going to go down? Real similar
like
to
a
Mars
Led Zeppelin?
attacks. Mars attacks.
Ack.
Right. It's going to be like.
Where were they just echoing? They were just talking on some major thing about
Israel was.
Event. Yeah. No, about the Orwell Mars Attacks radio show.
Yeah, so I was doing not War of the Worlds, but Mars Attacks, the movie.
Yeah,
Jack Nicholson. Right. And but yeah, it's going to be that silly thing where it's like, oh, they're our friends, and you're going to be our friends, right? Anyway, yeah, that's how it's going to roll out. So if you want weekend entertainment, you can take a look at Mars Attacks. I think you'll be more than entertained.
I'm just kind of curious, what theory of aliens do you think they'll go with?
From my perspective, it's going to be something like that they're going to be the helpful, friendly ones. It's going to be like V.
But are we going to get the end of like Star Trek First Contact where the Vulcans come down and be like, we're here to help you? Or is it going to be more like,
Twilight Zone, we're here to serve human beings.
It's a cookbook!
How to serve man.
It's a cookbook!
To serve man.
Would you like some human stew?
Yeah. No, I think something like Childhood's End. V. That narrative.
What about all the monoliths?
It makes you wonder what's going to be in those shots if we're all going to be buying into this.
I'm more into polyliths.
Acid.
Really. Polyliths than monoliths.
Better than polyticks. They'll suck you dry.
Oh,
that's true.
Snap,
That's
they
true.
will.
Just like SJWs.
Snaps.
So we're winding down here, gentlemen. Anything we want to talk about here to throw out for the final hurrah?
Yeah,
Vogon poetry.
I gotta get the video
It's
done.
the third worst in the galaxy.
Vogon Poetry Slam coming up. Live on my channel.
I've got my poetry appreciation chair ready.
Ooh, nice. Outstanding.
All right, well, I'll close out because I'm going to get going on the video here, Jason. We're releasing 287 with Athen Clemente about his accurate prediction of when the vaccines would first be delivered. He hit it right on the money, right on the day, December 14. And we talk about some possibilities of the coming year, early year 2020. I think we focus mostly up to spring, but I think we get around up to most of the year, don't we, Jason? I don't recall.
We do, but the whole last chunk of it, we're talking about how there doesn't seem to be a change of decades anymore, which was a very interesting thing that we all kind of noticed.
Right. Since the year 2000, the world has not been the same to me as it was my entire life, where when you went from 79 to 80, you knew it. There was absolutely a visible decade change, and it was more than just rewriting the date. my entire life, which includes from the 60s forward. For some reason, the decades we didn't really notice when we went from 2010 to 2011, in the same way that most people listening to this right now don't realize that 21 is first year of a new decade. Doesn't feel like it. Clothes aren't any different. Movies aren't different. Cars aren't different. It's bizarre, to say the least. But anyhow, I'd like to wish you all a good night. Jason, I'm going to punch and get going on the video. Baldini, ciao, mein.
Sure.
All right. Talk to you tomorrow.
Egg Foo Young.
Lo mein for me. All right. Well, my chatty friend.
Something Wong.
All right. So, I would like to break down these little cartoons at some point. You should have the link now, right?
I didn't see it.
But I put them in the chat for everybody that if they want to check them out. One person said they had looked at it and it was like a satanic acid trip or something like that. And I was like, well, don't do acid and watch this shit. That's for sure. They're pretty messed up. But yep. All right. So Wayne should be back next week, and we will do the actual document we were going to do, which is called, just to give everybody a heads up. Let me find the document. The document is called... Where is Wayne McCroy? The Triangle of Enhancement Medicine, Disabled People, and the Concept of Health, a New Challenge. It's very wordy, but it gets into medicine and transhumanism, which is why, of course, Wayne wanted to break it down. But when we're talking about transhumanism, even though we all know what we're talking about, that's really Wayne's superpower. So we thought
his forte. Yeah,
absolutely. Thought we'd wait for that one until next week, and we'll break that down for everybody. But I guess that'll do. We can sign off there. Thanks everybody for being here. Baldini, what you got going on? Anything fun, interesting, exciting?
Just, doing the do. Back this weekend, of course, with more unintended consequences. I was going to ask you how you see your lovely lady. I haven't talked to her in a couple of days, so I was hoping that she is well, trying to get some... I've been filling in the poppycock in her absence. So
yeah, no, she's getting there. She's not bad.
Okay.
Not bad at
Good.
all.
Well, send her
taking steps positive steps in the right direction, definitely.
Outstanding. Send her all my love, and so I think I'll probably be cocky popping.
Cocky pop. I sent her a couple of good articles that I thought you guys would have a good old time breaking down. One was
awesome.
On the a giant black hole in a distant galaxy that is
nice.
That has all of a sudden disappeared.
Oh.
And what was the other one? I forget. And there was another space one I found too, and I sent over to her, and she thought they were both hysterical. So I'm sure you guys will be breaking down those on a show coming soon to a station near you.
Coming soon, indeed. And I usually, I'll throw in some mailbag stuff. We'll get all the Florida man, all the cocky pop stuff, all the usual suspects with the Poppy crew. Tomorrow morning. So we'll do that. Sue Finelli and all the kids, great to see you. And we'll see you tomorrow morning. And I'm going to sign off for now and go hang out with my lovely bride.
I'll sign off here in a second. Oh, there is one thing that I don't think I've announced to anybody that I'm doing yet, and that's
just secret.
It's no longer a secret. I'm working on a version of The Sound of Silence with none other than Brett William Dietz, the awesome, incredibly talented maestro.
Yeah.
He's already given me all the orchestration and everything. We decided to do it as a primarily piano piece, but then he wrote this incredible orchestration to it. So I'm trying my damnedest to get my voice back into shape enough so I can do it justice. I used to be a pretty good singer years ago. I don't just have that much time to be that musical. So I'm trying to sing this. I'm like, man, I'm nothing compared to what I used to be. So I'm taking my time to do it right. Like I'm practicing every day again. I have a 4-octave range, but it's kind of So yeah, it's going to take a little while, but I just want to let everybody know that I'm going to do that. But it's not just the music side of it. It's also going to be a video. The reason why I chose it was because I want to make it be very impactful of what's going on today. I use a lot of imagery, so it's going to be a little mini movie, 3-4 minutes, whatever it comes out to be.
My vocal chops are oh dear.
I can still sing, but I'm not like I'm listening back to myself and I'm like, I'm not letting anybody hear this. Like, no, if you guys are going to hear this, it's going to be because I'm really good and that I don't have to fix things. And because I'm not all about that.
I was playing around the other day and I went, oops, no, better not do that. So I'll put that on the shelf for the time being. But maybe if I finish, you can, I can tell as I have been quitting smoking that I can hear more phlegm. I've got a good mic, and so as I heal from smoking, I hear more phlegm, and so I'll have to, I guess, finish that up, and we'll see how that goes. Yes, fuck the fucking fuckers, Doug. That's for sure. Just use auto-tune.
Yeah.
No.
I could do that. I could literally sit here at my desk and do it line by line, and you'd probably never know because it's not like I'm that bad and I'm just tweaking things. When you notice the auto-tuning and the one I have, I don't even have auto-tune. I have, or I probably do somewhere in a bundle, but I never use it. But I use one called Melodyne that's a lot smoother unless you jack it hard. That's the one I've used to tweak vocals. But
well, this is an old joke. Yeah, I guess it dates it now. It's 20 plus years old. Joke about the difference between a pro audio engineer and an amateur is that the client comes to the amateur audio engineer and says, "Hey, can you make me sound like that last Cher record?" And the engineer says, "I don't know how." So the client goes to the professional engineer and says, "Hey, will you make me sound like Cher on her last record?" And he says, "No." No.
I'll tell you, what I actually use it the most for? That's funny, but what I actually use Melodyne for the most is to make sure everything is properly in 432. I check it on there, and if anything's a little out, like I just.
That's cool. Yeah, I like retuning stuff to 432 and playing around with it. It's a subtle change, but it certainly is impactful. It's very interesting.
Well, the thing I noticed about this, I know I've talked about this on the show before, but since we're talking about music a little bit before we run off here, I noticed that it's a big difference that, like, let's say you take a Beatles song or something like that and you tune it down. It's completed, like it's already been done. But when you're building things track by track, like what I'm doing, and you're doing it at 432, it builds together something different than just
in a
tuning.
Different way. Yes,
it's something about the way the frequencies bloom together. That's
yes,
very
the elements
different.
go together.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. There's just something to it. I mean, I could be just blowing smoke up my own ass, but I think I hear it.
No, I sense it. I sense it as well. It's like the conversation we were having as well, right? About the fact that most humans can not hear past 20 kilohertz. When I was younger, I could hear nearly up to about 32, like almost dog whistle.
Dude.
I know, man. I couldn't be anywhere near televisions. CRT screens drove me crazy. And the teachers couldn't believe that I could hear it. And I was like, oh my God, it's so loud. You can't hear that shit. Anyway, but most people can't hear past 20. But we always knew making equipment that if you made very wide bandwidth equipment, like up to 100,000, it sounded a lot better. It's like, well, why would that be the case? Well, it's additive synthesis. If you take the wider bandwidth stuff, it actually modulates the lower frequency things.
Right.
In
it's
such
adding
a way
harmonics.
It's adding harmonics, and again, this goes into this whole idea of if you come back then to cymatics and frequency and harmony and resonance, it's all connected, right? It is all fundamentally connected, and so when you're putting stuff together at that level, as you said, rather than as a completed work and then just shifting the whole thing down, but when you're building these things, then the fundamental building blocks are each of them at that different frequency. I think that yes, what you get is a much better product. Absolutely.
Well, we'll see how that turns out. Hopefully, I'll have that done sometime in the near future.
It'll be awesome.
Yesterday is the first day that my voice behaved itself, and I don't know if it was the great big cup of hot turmeric tea I had drunk that cleared my throat out, but I was singing. I was practicing my own stuff just on my guitar, and I'm like, oh, my voice is finally behaving itself. I'm not like being pushed weirdly in weird ways where it's like my voice just wasn't cooperating, because like I know how to do like weird control and change the pitch, like because I'm good at doing voices too, like I can mimic things a lot, and so I know how to use like the back of my throat and things like that. But it's like lately when I've been trying to push really hard with my singing voice, it's been faltering. I'm like, stop that. Like, do what I tell you.
Yeah, right. No, behave, right? Yeah, baby. My fingers do that sometimes. I do noodling before I start each of my shows. It's just improvisational, just extemporaneous, and sometimes the hands just don't do it. They're just like, no, I don't.
I've got a digital connection with my Kemper, but I should do that myself. I'll just
plug it in, send it over via SPDIF, and I'll sit there and noodle around among my Les Pauls on some ambient tone or something.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, it'd be terrific. We have a lot of fun doing that. All right, man. It is now past 8 o'clock, and I must on the West Coast. I must run off and spend time with the bride. She came in and asked me if I heard that military aircraft, and I'm like, yes, I did. Came in very low, so we're curious about that.
All right, everybody. Let's sign off.
A lot of spooks around.
Thanks for being here. Sorry about the last-minute change of direction, but hey, I think we pulled it off just well. I didn't even realize how far I looked up and it was 9:17. I was like, oh, I guess we did get into something interesting because I wasn't even paying attention to the time. So hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And all right, take care, everybody. Sayonara.
To see. Will speak, manifest beside me, my angel, for all to see. to see.